politics. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics. So if you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great response. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you don't know too much about it. I know it can be like trying to learn a new language, so that is what I'm doing here, everybody. I'm going to answer all your questions. You don't got to worry about getting judged for not knowing things or anything of that nature. All you got to do is ask the question, "What's up, Christy? Good to see you again." And I will try my best to give you a good answer. Learning about politics can sometimes feel like trying to learn a new language, and there's all these three-name agencies, and sometimes we just refer to people by their last names, and so it can be really intimidating to try to learn about that stuff. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to give people the helpful information that they need in order to understand truly what is going on in our government. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you didn't vote. I don't care if you're further to the left than me or further to the right than me. I am just here to answer all of your questions about politics. I'm glad that you're up to speed, Christy. Nothing to report. Nothing that you need to learn about. But I'm happy that you're here, anyways. So yeah, I don't believe in making people feel stupid or ashamed for not knowing things. So if you got any questions, just let me know in the chat. I'll happily answer it. I'm not here to ridicule people for not knowing things. I'm not here to make fun of people for their beliefs. If you're further to the left than me, if you're further to the right than me, I don't care. You don't got to worry about getting judged or getting roasted or getting debated here on my live stream. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. So if you got questions about politics, just put them in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it, but I think it's important for people to recognize the things that their government is doing and recognize the power that they have as citizens to be able to affect that. And in order to do that, you kind of have to know what's going on. Tina Cake says, "I'm so angry the president of El Salvador says he doesn't have the power to bring Garcia back." Um, is that what the president of El Salvador said? Because that seems to be a bald-faced lie, because he is a dictator, so he has complete control over that country. Yeah, I think the biggest concern is not only that Trump is saying that he's not gonna, bring that guy back because he doesn't feel like he has to, even though the Supreme Court told him that he has to, but also the fact that he's arguing that he can do that to any of us. If you're a citizen, if you've done zero crimes, if they just don't like you, then they'll fucking send you to a concentration camp in El Salvador. It's fucking terrifying, my man. So yeah, thank you for your comment, Tina, and Dr. Bob Fanboy. Good to see you again. So yeah, if anybody's got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I'll do my best to give you guys a great answer. 45MQ56 says, "How bad have Democrats been that Trump got elected? Put your own house in order." I don't think that has anything to do with anything that Democrats did or did not do. Democrats never get any credit for all the good things they do, and Republicans never get any blame for all the bad things that they do. So we are just looking at the natural, outcome of a media environment and an electoral system that has been weaponized against the Democratic Party for 40 years, maybe more. Rise Against 1984 says, "Should citizens continue to go to work in a system that does not benefit them?" I'm all for the kind of collective action of, mass striking and boycotting and protesting and stuff like that. Reb says MAGA friendly. I'm not MAGA myself. I'm happy to answer questions that MAGA might have, but I do not support Trump. So if that's what you're asking. But I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to yell at people if you say I'm MAGA and here's my question, Let's see here. So yeah, I am for all of that collective action, Rise Against 1984. So absolutely, people should do all the things that we can do to exercise our, what do you call it? Exercise our power over the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is in league with them. Let's see here. So here's the thing for anybody here that might, what do you call it? Tony Complete, there's so many debaters on TikTok. Well, I'm not here to debate. I am just here to answer questions about politics. Tim821 says, "Thoughts on Bill Maher?" Bill Maher I think he's become, like a cliche of a shitty old person where he has not updated his software in a long time. He is, absorbing the exact same misinformation and propaganda that the people that he thinks he's above are, and he is letting it sway him. Where he's watching Donald Trump on television do crazy shit, and he's calling out Donald Trump for doing crazy shit, but then he goes to dinner with him, and Trump lies to his face and pretends like he's a good guy, and then he leaves there and he's like, how can we make the nice guy that I had dinner with be the same guy as our current president? And it's like, bro, Donald Trump just fucking lied to your face. You think he gives a shit about you? He wanted to have a nice meal with a famous person. As soon as you leave there, he's going to start telling everybody. He's going to he'll fucking throw you in jail. Like, he doesn't give a shit, Scott123 says, how long before the courts take action on Trump's deportation actions? That is an excellent question, Scott. And I guess it'll happen faster the more people like you and me that actually do things, that put pressure on our elected representatives to actually do their fucking jobs. Sun Moon Guard TikTok says, Dems are super upset. They're for the rich and Republicans are for the people. The people elected Trump. First of all, that's not a question. And second of all, everything you just said was false. So yeah, I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question or you're going to get blocked. Carmi says, hopefully they deport you guys. Well, I'm worried that they will. Let's see here. Who are the new leaders in Congress that will push for real change to benefit all Americans? I mean, it seems like the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is the move. It seems like they're the ones that are actually taking action. But there are a lot of Democrats, from the centrist Dems to the progressive Dems, who are all doing things to fight against the Trump administration. Kevin, ARC says, is this the downfall of the United States? Because it feels like there's no turning around this time. I mean, if people like you and me do nothing, Kevin, then yes, it will be the downfall of the United States. But if people do the work of taking our power back and doing all the things that we should be doing and, voting and protesting and organizing and convincing other people to vote for Democrats, if we sweep, the midterms in 2026 and people are able to, vote and, fucking get out there, then yeah, we can 100% save this country. If one person broke it, another person can fix it and vice versa. So, if that's the sort of thing that you're worried about, please don't just hide under the sheets and hope and pray that someone comes and saves you. Do the work. Join me in doing the work to save the country. Let's see here. User a bunch of numbers says, voting for the agenda of Democrats in 2025 is crazy work. No, it's not. User a whole bunch of numbers. Solo says, are you a real person? I am a real person. Mr. Mara Barber says, I'm in a small town. How can I protest and have my voice heard? So, do you know your neighbors? Do you know who they voted for? Are you talking to the people in your small town about what's going on in this country and what the government is doing? Because sometimes just ripping people out of their misinformation, fucking spirals can be enough work for one person to do. Also, there are great organizations that are doing this work all across the country, and you can just join them. Like you can make phone calls for them. You can do filing for them. Let's see here. OKZ says, is it true that hotel rooms have an extra chair just for you? Not for me. But I know what you're doing there, OKZ, and you're out of here. Carol says, why is voting for Democrats crazy work? Respond to the person who posted that. It was crazy. Yeah, I don't think they're going to respond to you, Let's see here. I love how Democrats are the most unemployed party. All right, Solo, congratulations. You're out of here as well. Again, I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, guys. Elliot says, what news providers do you recommend? I recommend getting your news from a variety of sources to target any kind of bias. But, I also prefer, let's see here. I think that the progressive media sources are the only ones that are accurately reporting what the Republican Party is doing. Bill C says, what are your qualifications? I know a lot about politics. User a bunch of numbers says, who doesn't want tax cuts, removal of government waste and fraud, the understanding of gender? So user a whole bunch of numbers. What you're describing is not actually what Republicans are doing in office, and it's also not what the Democratic platform is. Let's see here. Checks out. Please stop that comment. Gigi says, how will we keep them from falsifying election results? So it's because elections in this country are the purview of the states. It is actually very difficult to have like a mass electioneering thing all 50 states or even just the important states. There are certain specific areas where that is an issue, and the way that you combat that is that if you live in those areas, you need to demand transparency, and you need to demand that you have free and fair elections. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as being informed about who your Secretary of State is, what the processes are by which votes become purged and voter rolls become purged and stuff like that. But yeah, you just you gotta be vigilant, you gotta be active. But there's also, like, you gotta rise up against any kind of attempt that the Republicans or the Trump administration might make to illegitimize, national elections. For example, the SAVE Act is going to be one method of voter suppression that they could try to do on a federal level. Check South. Last warning: if you don't stop with that comment, I'm going to block you. Jams Ride, the positive vibe, says they are trying to stop people from voting in red states. Well, the people that live in those red states should do something about that. Let's see here. All right, blocking that dude. Maximilian Fernand says, most importantly, you have to accept the results when the person you like loses. Yeah, tell that to Republicans, my man. User a bunch of numbers says, Trump has a press conference like every 5 minutes. I don't think there's more of a transparent president. User a bunch of numbers. Having a press conference does not make you transparent. That just means that you are actively spreading misinformation. If all he's doing is lying, that does not mean that he is transparent. Mr. President says, how does condemning people for who they vote for make you any better than the man you hate? I don't condemn people for the person that they vote for. And if you watch my live streams, you will see me constantly preaching to have the kind of radical empathy for people that don't vote the same way as you. Let's see here. Strange Odor says, bro is cooking these MAGA bots. I mean, I'm just answering people. I'm trying to answer as nicely as I possibly can. Let's see here. Gigi says, do you feel the results of this presidential election were legitimate? I mean, they were as legitimate as they can be. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of propaganda. There was a lot of lying. There was a lot of cheating. But I think what we're looking at is, people's votes weren't changed. People were just encouraged to not vote. They made it harder for people to vote, but I don't think that anybody hacked into the systems the way that some people are suggesting. But there are very real claims of voter suppression and things like that happen in red states to try to get people who generally vote for Democrats to not vote. And I think that people should be extremely angry about that, whether you are left, right, or center. Let's see here. Carter T says Democrats were intimidating voters all over the country. That is inaccurate, Carter T, and also that's not a question, so you are out of here. Let's see here. Cat Daddy says, why is Trump able to go against the Supreme Court with no repercussions? Just curious. So the mechanisms by which the Supreme Court would enforce any of their rulings are the U.S. Marshals. But the U.S. Marshals also answer to the Attorney General, who is Pam Bondi. And Pam Bondi is a Trump sycophant. Like, she will just do whatever Trump tells her to do. Now, in an ideal government, the Department of Justice is completely separate from the White House. But the White House is currently directing the Department of Justice, which is completely unethical, though not entirely illegal, I would say. And so he is telling Pam Bondi to not, to tell the U.S. Marshals not to enforce the directives of the Supreme Court. So, we're looking at here is corruption. We're looking at, weaponization of the Justice Department against Trump's adversaries. We are looking at a constitutional crisis where the White House is telling the other branches of the government that they have no power. It is terrifying and extremely concerning, and people should be doing everything they possibly can to exert pressure on the government to stop them from, doing the crazy, unethical, and illegal shit that they are currently doing. User Gibbs says, yo, my dude, why do you hate the Republic? I don't hate the Republic. Quad says, not a crisis, it's good. I mean, it will be when they come after you, and hopefully they won't Panzer says, do you think Steve or Dave will win? I don't know what you're talking about. Veggie says, what are your thoughts about what's happening with the North Carolina Supreme Court election? So I don't, see, this is what I'm talking about when I say that Democrats never get any credit and Republicans never get any blame. Republicans have been doing massive voter suppression and stealing elections and lying and cheating for, a couple of decades now. And it is not the biggest story in America. It is, for some reason, it's not the biggest story in America that a Democratic-ish, like a liberal-ish judge won a state secretary seat in North Carolina, and the government, run by Republicans of North Carolina, is actively canceling that election and giving it to the more conservative judge instead. It is unbelievable. It's fucking Banana Republic shit. It is changing the rules after the game has already been decided. It's like two football teams playing the Super Bowl and one winning, and then the commissioner who bet on the other team saying, actually, the other team won because we're changing a rule that says you're not allowed to do blah, 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 I think that everybody in this country should be fucking pissed as hell about what is going on in North Carolina. And it's completely unconscionable. There's no excuse for it. There's no rationalization for it. It's terrible. Dan Blackberry, good to see you again. If Trump had a bunch of press conferences where he's lying with not transparency, completely agree with that. Let's see here. Mara Barber, who do you think will run in 2028? I always punt on that question, Mara. Good to see you again, but I'm not here to talk about 2028. I'm here to talk about 2026. We got midterm elections coming up, and I hope that everybody watching is activated and getting out the vote for Democratic candidates up and down the ballot. It'll be really difficult, but we can fucking sweep that election if everybody does the work. If everybody gets out there and does the work, then nobody has to do a lot of work, and we can fucking sweep the midterms and stop the fucking insanity and corruption and worsening of our living conditions that is currently going on. Let's see here. Stop spamming the comments or you will get blocked. Let's see here. This guy says, bring it up. Let's see here. Ghoul says, I thought the chemtrails would be gone when Trump got in, but no such luck. Completely agree. Based Billy says, hell nah, conservatism is the way for real. Okay, well, that's not a question. And so you're out of here. This guy just told me to move to Japan. And so you are also out of here. Again, I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Lee Hodge says, our big cities have black mayors. All right, well, that's just fucking racist. So now you're out of here. Good Lord, I'm doing a lot of blocking today. Good to see everybody. All right. AG Podcast says, where was this energy when Holder did it for Obama? Holder did not do it for Obama, AG Podcast, and I would challenge you to find me a single shred of evidence that anybody has weaponized the Justice Department the way that Trump is currently weaponizing the Justice Department. Joe Padilla says, why isn't Trump being investigated for manipulation of stocks and stuff? For the same reason he's not being investigated for all of his other crimes, which is that the people in power are also Republicans and they are in the bag for Donald Trump. I don't know why nobody listens to me, but I told you all this was going to happen, that if Trump got back into office, the Republican Party would just lay over and let him fucking do whatever the fuck he wanted, regardless of how illegal or unconstitutional, regardless of if he fucking trashes the economy or makes other people's lives worse. Panic and Freak Out says, is there any hope that the Republicans will eat themselves? There's a slim chance of that happening, but I wouldn't count on it. I would say let's all operate as though the Republican Party is going to be just fine. So maybe they implode, maybe they don't. But we need to do the work to make sure that we vote them all out of office, because that's really the only way that we get out of here. The Republican Party needs to pay for the things that they have done, and they need to pay hard at the ballot box. As long as they continue getting elected, they're just going to continue being extremist, fascists, fucking tools of the billionaire class to fucking stomp on all our necks. And because that's the reason why they keep on getting more extreme, is they keep on winning elections, Evan Olson says, is it possible that Trump is trying to rebalance the global trading bloc by getting away from China? I think that is an extremely generous read of what he is doing when, everybody, including people inside of his administration, are like, he is completely fucking insane and he has no idea what he's doing. Caden Estep says, both parties are a disaster, neither stand for what they used to. That is inaccurate, Caden. And when you say both parties are, the same or both parties are equally bad, all you're doing is giving cover for the worst party. Because we can all look at the shit that Republican politicians are doing right now, and if people like you say, well, both parties are the same, then people think that voting for the other party isn't going to change anything. But voting for the other party does change things. There are massive differences in their platforms. There are massive differences in the outcomes of the places where Democrats tend to be in charge. And there are massive differences in outcomes for the country when Democrats are in charge. So you can miss me with that both sides bullshit. Bubblegum3 says, how do we get people out of their echo chambers and encourage dialogue? Excellent question, Bubblegum3. And that is part of what I am doing here is I'm trying to get people to recognize that the mass misinformation bubbles is something that we are all experiencing on social media. The voters that we need to get to make this country better are all getting the news off of social media. And social media is the Wild West. You know, it is not where we are going to change the dialogue. It is not where we are going to disabuse people of their false notions. The way that that happens is in real life with people that hopefully you already know a little bit. So if you're watching this and you want to try to solve this problem of misinformation and information bubbles, talk to people in real life. Talk to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your loved ones, and make sure that they are not part of these misinformation spheres. Correct them of any propaganda that they have accidentally ingested. All right, this guy says Trump is the best. That is not a question, and so you are out of here. Devlocks says, what do you think about abortion? Should the unborn baby have rights? So, you know, I recognize that we live in a country where not everybody agrees with me that a fetus is not a baby. So what do we do with that fact? What do we do with the fact that there are both kinds of people living here? People that think abortion is fine and people that think abortion is murder. Why don't we meet somewhere in the middle and we'll have a compromise about when is the latest that a woman can get an abortion, and before that, women should be able to get abortions, because we know that making abortion illegal doesn't work. You know, it only makes abortions more dangerous for women. We also know that the Republican Party isn't doing anything to stop accidental pregnancy. They're not doing anything to make it easier for people to actually have babies, where women feel like they have to have abortions because they can't afford to start a family at this part of their life. So I think we got two basic issues here. We got what should an ideal policy look like, and we need people to recognize that the Republicans' plan is not working. Even if you're pro-life, the Republicans' plan is not working. I will also add this, that there's a disagreement between what is and is not a baby. Is a fetus a baby? Is a fetus not a baby? But we can all agree that children are children, right? We all agree. And there's only one party that agrees that we should do nothing about gun violence against our children. It's the Republican Party. So the Republican Party is the only party that is cool with something that everybody agrees is children dying. Mike Duncan says, if I get a flat tire today, is it the Republicans' fault? I mean, it depends. Overshoot Family Crew says, constitutional crisis now. Now what do we do? The same thing we do every day, Pinky. We do fucking protesting, boycotting, striking, putting pressure on elected representatives, talking to the people that we know in real life, make sure that they're ready to vote for Democrats in the midterm, make sure that they're activated and organized and knowledgeable about what is happening. It is up to us to stop this. Nobody's coming to save us, everybody. Mike Duncan says, Democrats agree, do nothing about crime. Mike Duncan, that is not a question, so you are out of here. Danny F. says, what would Democrats need to do to ignite that engagement and fire MAGA's run to increase turnout? You know, Danny F., I have a theory about that. The short version is this. I don't think that the Democrats, because their enemy is the billionaire class, I don't think that Democrats can, even if they have the most perfect messaging in the world, would be able to get their message through to the American public. So I don't think that we should be talking about like, oh, what should Democrats do to get us out of this and convince people to vote? I think, what should you and I do to get people to vote for Democrats? This is our job, in my opinion, you know, like get people to vote for better politicians. If you don't like the Democrats that are currently in office, then primary them. And if you don't, and if that person doesn't win the primary, then you still got to vote for the better of the two options, and that being the Democrat. So let's do that work together. Let's not sit around and hope that the Democrats come up with the most perfect messaging strategy that gets people to convinces people to vote for them, Let's convince people to vote for Democrats. Let's activate people. Let's organize strikes and boycotts and protests. Let's get political action groups together to put pressure on elected representatives. Let's work with organizations that are already doing this stuff. Indivisible, Run for Something, Vote Save America. Like, the work is there for you and me to do. So let's not sit around and wait for someone to save us because, spoiler alert, nobody is. Caleb says, being a Democrat does not mean you're right, LMAO. What a weird way of you thinking. That's not what I said, Caleb. The real estate guy says, can politics cure this desire Republicans have to see marginalized groups punished and oppressed? I don't know what you mean by that, the real estate guy. I mean, can politics cure this desire that Republicans have? I think education is probably a bigger thing. I think getting people to read is probably a better thing. But it all starts with getting Democrats in office. Like, getting Democrats in office is step one, because right now we are on a fucking, express train to fascist dictatorship. And the only way that we stop that is by giving power to the Democrats and taking it away from the Republican Party. Let's see here. Robert Castro, good to see you again. I feel like what Bernie is doing is a good way to motivate the base. I completely agree with that, Robert Castro. I love what Bernie is doing, but that is not the only tool that we have in our tool belt. So I'm not going to tell everybody to do a Cory Booker. I'm not telling everybody to do an AOC. I'm not telling everybody to do a Bernie Sanders. I'm just saying, everybody just do shit. And don't just sit around and wait for someone else to do it for you. Barry Layton says the Democrat Party has no intelligent candidates. That is not true, Barry, and also that's not a question, so you are out of here. Let's see here. You, sir, need more coffee. Good to see you again. Did you see Trump and Bukele in the Oval Office? What a disgrace. They said they can't bring him back. That's fucking infuriating. I did not see that Bukele did a press conference with Trump in the Oval Office. That is... yeah, that's fucking infuriating, man. And I hope that America sees this shit. I hope that America sees what's going on. That a dude who did nothing fucking wrong and is a legal citizen was just fucking, kidnapped and sent to a concentration camp in El Salvador. And now, maybe he's dead. Maybe the dictator of that country, Bukele, is just saying he's not going to bring him back. Maybe the Trump administration is saying we're not going to try to get him back. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. The Trump administration is also saying that they should be able to do that to you and me also, User a bunch of numbers says, not a citizen, though. He was a citizen, so I don't know what you're talking about. And also, that's not a question, so you're out of here. Wanderer says, why can't we, the people, start impeachment process? Just because it's not in our Constitution right now, Wanderer. But there are things that we can do to get Trump impeached. We can elect Democrats up and down the ballot in 2026. And it's not just about you voting. It's about you convincing other people to vote for Democrats as well. It's about you putting pressure on elected Republicans to do their fucking jobs. We have agency here, everybody. So let's fucking do the work, guys. Jonathan Garcia says, how is Trump not being charged with insider trading? Because the only people who would do that are currently in the bag for him. He has a bunch of co-conspirators running the Justice Department and the FBI right now, and the Federal Trade Commission and shit like that, Jonathan. So obviously they're not going to impeach their best friend because they like what Trump is doing. They don't care that he's corrupt because he's making them rich as well. And the only cure to that is electing Democrats in the midterms. Uper Lar says, will Trump face the same fate as the South Korean president did when he declared martial law? I mean, it just depends on what people do. It depends on if people take to the street and do what we can do and exercise our power. If you're asking me, will Republicans in Congress, will the Republican-leaning Supreme Court do anything about it? The answer is most likely not. Like, they have the moral fiber of a fucking jellyfish. They've got exactly zero spine, zero integrity. Some of them are worried for their lives because they're worried about what Trump's base will do to them if they go against him. But some of them are just like fully in the bag. They're like, yeah, corruption, grift, we're on board, man. Let's do it together. All right. Let's see here. Mamrock, any answers? Lots of answers. I'm doing it. High Frequency says, both sides do insider trading. Yes, but only Democrats have put forth any serious bills to try to stop insider trading. Only Democrats have put forth any serious bills to get the money out of politics. So if that's something you care about, you got to vote for Democrats. Joe Kim Noah says, let's talk about Nancy Pelosi being worth hundreds of millions on a $200K salary. Her husband works in finance. That's why she's rich. The spark plug says, "Why do politicians lie?" I guess it's easier than telling the truth. Let's see here. Bella Catface, ha to the same ones that pulled out their stocks before it went belly up like Nancy Pelosi. I don't know what you're talking about. Bubba Gump says, "What can personalities in the echo chamber do to not add to the dichotomy of the political world?" You know, I'm not going to tell everybody that they have to do what I'm doing, but what I am doing is trying to make sure that I'm not getting into fights with random people. My enemies are very clear. It is the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working with them to ruin all of our fucking lives. The 99%, we're in this together. And so if I got somebody on here calling me a cuck, if somebody is being annoying and saying that they're a tanky lefty and they're calling me a centrist corporate shillout or some shit like that, I'm not just going to yell at them. I'm not going to have fucking debate show where I just bring Trump people on and I prove how dumb they are and shit like that. I'm not going to tell Republican women that they're ugly or that they can't do their makeup. I am just going to be redirecting all of that ire to the billionaire class and the Republican politicians that are working with them. Let's see here. Josh says, "What do you think about Kilmar Abrego Garcia?" I mean, it's infuriating. It's terrifying. The Trump administration is threatening to do that to all of us. Any human being on here should be worried that the Trump administration is now saying that they can kidnap you and ship you off to a concentration camp in El Salvador that we are paying for, by the way, that we are sending them like $6 million a year or some shit like that so that they can do these wildly illegal and immoral things to American citizens who have done nothing fucking wrong. If you've ever said anything negative about Trump or Republicans or Elon Musk or Tesla or anything like that, then you are in danger of fucking being disappeared by the Trump administration, And if you're not, like, if you're a MAGA person and you're thinking, like, this isn't going to affect me, I mean, it might. You never know. That's the problem with authoritarian governments, is that sometimes you just get swept up. If you're standing next to somebody that ICE is sending to a concentration camp, you could get there too. The fucking director, the fucking border czar, Tom Homan, just admitted that. He came out and said that they're doing collateral deportations. That just means if you're standing next to somebody who's getting deported, you could be swept up in there as well. Let's see here. This guy says, "Why lie?" I'm not lying. I'm just reporting the things that you can Google and see for yourself. Let's see here. Jimmy says propaganda. That is also a block because, again, it's not a question. Let's see here. Fearmonger plead BS. Again, that is not a question, so you're blocked. This dude sounds like CNN. Well, they report the news, I guess, because that's all I'm fucking doing is reporting the news. All right. Joey, I know exactly what you're doing, and you're out of here as well. Okay. ASRC says, "Do you think Trump could become a dictator?" He could if we, the people, don't stop him. The Republican Party isn't going to stop him. The Republican-led Supreme Court is not going to stop him, so we have to do it. The Democratic Party does not have the resources to stop him because they do not have any political power right now, because we, the people, did not vote for Democrats as much as we should have. Kayla Geist says, "How do we stop him?" This is the things that citizens can do. Voting, protesting, striking, boycotting, putting pressure on our elected representatives, especially if they're Republicans, and organizing, recruiting, getting other people to join us, making sure that we're talking to people in real life so that we get them out of any sort of like propaganda or misinformation. Beck said, "We did vote, and what was the result?" No, we didn't, Beck. Only 23% of people voted for Donald Trump. 85 million people could have voted in 2024 and didn't. So no, we did not vote for this. Let's see here. Ava said, "You're spreading misinformation, though." No, I'm not, Ava. Let's see here. Devlock says, "What do you do for a living?" I'm a professional touring stand-up comedian. Kayla Guy says, "Will someone set my governor's house on fire?" Well, that's not the move, obviously. I don't condone any kind of violence or, what do you call it? Any kind of destruction of property. Let's see here. Devlocks, you are spamming the comments, so now you are out of here. Okay, let's see here. What do we got here? Existential Explorer says, "What kind of economic policies can benefit rural Americans and encourage them to vote Democrats?" The Democratic platform is more beneficial for rural Americans than the Republican platform. The issue is that that information is not getting to those people because those people are stuck in information bubbles the same way that everybody in this country is stuck in information bubbles. And, there but for the grace of God go I. If you were born into that town, into that family, going to that church, getting your information off of that Facebook, then you would be voting against your best interests as well. So I think the way that we reach those voters is by talking to them in real life. So surely some of us know these people, like we don't have to just fly to some random small town, start knocking on doors, that has limited efficacy because they don't fucking know us, I'm going to go to their door. They look at my fucking beautiful Jewish face and they're like, this guy's full of shit, it works better if it's people that already know you, or just support organizations that are already doing this work. Rhonda Heave says, do you think Trump could get charged with treason? I think he deserves to get charged with treason. Whether or not he actually does has everything to do with, what the people do, whether we elect people that will hold Trump accountable for the things that he has done. Dan Blackroyd, I think that is a wise strategy. El Chapo says, charged with treason for what? I mean, he is actively working with an adversarial nation to destroy America. That seems, enough for me. He also did a fucking coup, so, there you go. Drew Manchu says, how's that comedy career going? It's going great. I perform to sold out audiences, fucking almost every time I go out. Bex says, okay, serious question. What's your opinion on banning abortion? Banning abortion doesn't work. All it does is make life worse for women. It puts their lives and fertility in danger. There are, I think, maybe a dozen women at this point who have died because of abortion bans in red states. There are children right now who don't have moms because of abortion bans in red states. So if you want to get rid of abortion, there are things that we can all do. We can work together to make abortion less. We can give children sex education. We can invest in family planning. We can raise the minimum wage. We can make childcare less expensive. All of those are policies that Republicans are firmly against, by the way. So it seems as though what they want is for women to accidentally get pregnant, be forced to have the children, and then live a desperate life of working 3 fucking jobs. And, maybe their boss is sexually harassing them and they can't fucking do anything about that because they got to make money to feed their family, So yeah, there you go. The other Jen says abortion is healthcare. I completely agree with that. Tommy says, do you think there will ever emerge a popular third party? Maybe, but not right now. El Chapo says, so you're saying kids lead to a difficult life? It can, El Chapo. That doesn't really seem all that controversial. Big Dog Gunna says, best news you've heard in the past week. I think probably that the Supreme Court voted 9-0 that the Trump administration has to bring back Garcia, who was illegally sent to a concentration camp in El Salvador, because at least, people like Alito and Thomas are saying that there are certain things that they are not willing to go along with. Let's see here. Liz Van says, should the United States lift sanctions on Cuba? I think so. We had normalized relations with Cuba during the Obama administration. It seems like that was doing more work than, the old regime of just completely cutting off contact. Tot says, we all know they're going to do gymnastics to try to get out of bringing him back. Yeah, Tots, but that doesn't mean that they can't suffer consequences for that. That doesn't mean that, if the reason why they can't bring him back is because he's already dead, that we can't raise hell and fucking protest and strike and boycott and make sure that everybody who allowed this to happen never has any political power ever again. We have we have the agency, we have the power to do stuff about this, so it doesn't serve us any good to just sit in our houses and be mad and not do anything. Do work. When you see shit like this happening that is illegal and immoral and unconscionable, do some shit. Tot says, would it be okay if I shared a link to the impeach Trump petition? You can. I don't really, I don't encourage people to click on links from people that, that you don't know. And also, I am skeptical of the efficacy of a petition to impeach Trump, but I also don't think that there's any wrong moves in a brainstorm, so I say fucking go for it, my man. Alrighty. Let's see here. Carmine says Trump would have used him to present himself as a hero. Look, I save him. Please clap. Let's see here. All right, Crypto Yef. That's a block. Congratulations. Alrighty, what do we got here? Tot says, what kind of consequences can they face? Will we see outcome from this? So consequences, we're talking about potential jail for people who have done this. Like what they did was illegal. It was unconstitutional. It was a violation of human rights, of his civil rights. And if he is dead, then we're talking about manslaughter charges. But in order to make that happen, we would need our government to be in control. It would have to be controlled by responsible people who are not Donald Trump and this current MAGA Republican Party. Now, the only people that are prepared to provide that kind of government right now is the Democratic Party. So we just got to rally. We got to get everybody to vote for Democrats in 2026. And if you don't like the Democrat that's in charge, you primary them. And then if you win that primary, congratulations. If you don't win that primary, you got to recognize that not everybody agrees with you. And still, you got to vote for better over worse. Taco Bell says, tell us how we are clashing with China, not because we are different, but because we have become similar. I just think that Trump thinks that he gains political points by appearing to be strong against China, but he's extremely weak on China. China's fucking kicking our ass right now. And it's all because of all this dumb shit that Trump is doing. Let's see here. Killiam Lord says Trump's response to not saying where he is was egregious. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Taco Bell says this dude has no real info. That is not a question, and so you are out of here. And also, it is inaccurate. I have lots of information. Let's see here. I don't know who Melanie Stansbury is, Jacob. Do I know who Melanie Stansbury is? Checking my notes real quick. Oh yeah, isn't she like a governor or something? Yeah, I got her on my list of people that are doing work, which I like. April Smith says, "What's your opinion on the consumer buying directly from China?" I don't really have a strong opinion about that. It seems like a thing that China is doing to try to get around the tariffs that the Trump administration is putting on them. I don't know how legal or logistically feasible that is. But I also don't really care if China does things to fuck with Trump and his, stupid ass fucking trade war, because, we are not poised to win that trade war. China has all the leverage. Xi Jinping is not worried about political pressure, but Donald Trump and Republicans are. So yeah, all that this is doing, we're separating ourselves from the rest of the globe. China is making themselves into the new global leader by, U.S. sort of like, relinquishing its role on the world stage. We are letting China take over. So congratulations, the Trump administration, you did it. Uncle Ron's Clipshot says, how did you feel when Kamala brought Megan Thee Stallion on stage twerking? I don't know what that is, Uncle Ron, but I don't really have a problem with it. I think Megan Thee Stallion is kind of dope. Let's see here. Carmine says, you hear about the Unfuck America tour. I have not, but that sounds pretty cool. Let's see here. Okay. John says, how do we get Trump out of office without a revolution? John, we have the same power today that we had during the Biden administration. Voting, protesting, striking, boycotting, organizing, convincing, recruiting. We need to find the 85 million people who did not vote in 2024 and get them to vote for Democrats. We need to find the people that voted for Republicans in 2024 and are unhappy about it and get them to vote for Democrats. If we run the table in the midterms, then we end this fucking chicanery right now. That we get out of fucking, stress and tortureville and we get back into reasonable world again. Let's see here. Tot says, is it okay to ask why you think a petition is a bad idea? I don't think it's a bad idea, Tots. I don't think anything's a bad idea. I just think that a petition is an extremely ignorable thing for the Republican Party. And I see a lot of other very productive ways of getting that same thing across. Sign a petition, feel like you solve the problem, and then not do the other work. That's an issue. I don't think that that's going to work. But if you sign a petition and call your Republican representatives and start a political action group with a bunch of your friends and talk to the people that you know in your life to make sure that they are not, slurping down any right-wing propaganda, and make sure that you are organizing to get votes out in 2026. That, I think, let's do all that. Do everything. Tony, do you think AOC will run in 2028? I don't know. And honestly, I don't really care, Tony. I'm focused on 2026. Wade, Sage of St. Louis, says, please, I'm begging you to try and get President Trump out of office. It won't end well for you. That feels like a physical threat to violence, Wade. So you're out of here, buddy. See you later. Okay. Mark Cox says, people believe in imaginary perversions all around them. They peer out their windows checking. I'm not really sure what your whole fucking point is, my man. Jay-Z says, so you think our bro in El Salvador is still alive? I have no idea. It does not change. Whether he's alive or not does not change that what the Trump administration did was unconscionable, illegal, evil, and that should be enough. Just that one thing should be enough where we should all be in the fucking streets. We should all be fucking protesting our heads off. We should be organizing. We should be making it known that anybody who does not try to stop this in government you're fucking out of here, man. The next opportunity we get to vote you out, you're fucking gone, my man. And maybe you live in a state where you can have a recall election and fucking get rid of your Republican senator or your Republican House member or whatever, because if fucking Thomas and Alito in the Supreme Court are voting that this guy needs to be brought back home, then there's no fucking reason why your Republican House member or your Republican senator should also be on the fence about this. It is unfucking believable that this is just happening. So do something about it, everybody. Let's see here. Jay says, how do you think the 2026 midterms will go? If people do the work, it'll go great. If people don't do the work, it'll go bad. Megastream says, Democrats will never win again. That is not a question, so you are out of here. Robert Castro says, I think you misspoke on one point. Wasn't he a protected class alien, not a citizen? He was legal but not naturalized. Yes, Robert Castro, that may be accurate, but for all intents and purposes, he is a citizen because, he's a legal resident. Greg says, thoughts on escalating conflict with Iran? We had a nuclear deal with Iran to keep them from getting a nuclear weapon. The Trump administration threw it away for absolutely no fucking reason. Now they're trying to do another deal. But it is clear that the Trump administration does not view the people that live in Iran as people. They don't view the people that live in Pakistan as real people. So they don't care about starting a war with them. And, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump administration just went full fucking, World War III in the Middle East. CRS says, thoughts on what should be done in Gaza? I think, Soul says, is he a Trump supporter? I am not. I think that step one needs to be reevaluating our relationship with Israel. Israel is a bad actor in that area. They are a bad ally to us. They are guilty of war crimes. We should stop sending them money and weapons. Whether or not the people of Israel continue to elect far-right extremists to run their country is up to them. But that does not mean that we have to support them, doing war crimes to their neighbors. Let's see here. Please stop spamming the comments, everybody. Brian Ball says, what are your thoughts on Bernie speaking at Coachella? Good for him. Get attention any way you can, my man. Christopher Lara says, thoughts on El Salvador? El Salvador is run by a vicious dictator named Bukele, who we're paying $6 million to, put people who have never done any crimes in a concentration camp. I worry for the citizens of El Salvador. Bukele is a piece of shit. And also Trump is a piece of shit for palling around with him. Eric, when do you think we'll see the wave of Gen Z politicians in Congress? We already are seeing some. Isn't Maxwell Frost Gen Z? Let's see here. CRS says, and not sending them back when the Supreme Court asks for their return. Yeah, we should all be really fucking pissed off about that. Mika says, thoughts on the defunding and elimination of the Department of Education. So there is some question about how, this will or will not be accomplished, because the Trump administration does not have the authority to just completely defund or disperse a government agency like the Department of Education. If the Department of Education goes away, then that will make it difficult for marginalized groups of people to get an education, whether they are disabled or English is not their first language, or if they come from a poor neighborhood. It just means that people who are not able-bodied and wealthy will have a harder time getting a quality education. And that is what the Republican Party wants. They want people to be desperate and stuck in poverty so that they can justify, running the country with an iron fist. They can justify us living in a police state, and they can force the desperate population to do whatever they want. Let's see here. Red-handed trade. Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're talking about there. It seems as though Trump is completely on board with what Bukele is doing, so I don't know what you're talking about as far as him throwing them in jail or whatever you're saying. Carmine says, what are the chances the SAVE Act backfires on the GOP? I'm not really sure. We have a habit in this country of memory holding a lot of the terrible things that Republicans do. You'll hear me say this 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 times more, but Democrats never get any credit and Republicans never get any blame. So no matter what mistakes the Republican Party makes, so long as the media spheres are controlled by the billionaire class, the sins of the Republican Party will be downplayed, and the good faith mistakes of the Democratic Party will be turned into massive, scandals that, rock the, Democratic electorate to its core. So yeah, I don't, we thought the Dobbs decision was going to be the end of the Republican Party, and it wasn't, because the social media spheres convinced everybody that Dobbs was not that big of a deal, and that it was way bigger of a deal to not vote for Democrats. So yeah, I am not going to sit around and wait for the the voting electorate to recognize what is in their best interests. I am going to encourage everybody to do the work, and that way we don't have to wait around for people to come to their senses. We can facilitate people voting better. Let's see here. Ciara says, are you involved in politics outside of social media? You are very well spoken and eloquent. Thank you, Ciara. I do a little bit of activism. I've done a lot of volunteering for groups like Invisible and Run for Something and Vote Save America. That's the reason why I am constantly championing those groups, is because I have worked with them in the past and I see the work that they're doing, and it is great work. It's just that there are not enough people doing it. Sean the Pooper says, why is Israel the only country that doesn't have to register as a foreign entity? I've heard that talking point before, Shaw the Pooper, and I'm not really sure how accurate it is. But yeah, I do think that AIPAC is it is not a good organization, and we should not be supporting it. Let's see here. Elgun Tolebron says something that I'm not going to read. Let's see here. Jesse Mern says they assume only Democrats lack the needed ID to vote. It will backfire. So Jesse, they don't care if they lose some votes because of this, because the groups that will be targeted by their voter suppression efforts, on the whole, vote for Democratic candidates more than Republican candidates. So they don't mind losing some of their own electorate if they stop a lot of women from voting, a lot of poor people from voting. Let's see here. Joseph Woodman says GOA and Doge said 2.7 trillion was sent improperly overseas for Medicaid. Do you know if it's true? So I gotta be honest, Joseph, that sounds very inaccurate, just based on the number and based on where it came from. Doge is making up a lot of shit that we have already debunked. So I am extremely skeptical that that is accurate. Diet Coke says the SAVE Act literally doesn't have anything in that stops women from voting, though. Diet Coke is what's called the voter suppression bill. So it doesn't stop people from voting, but it does make certain groups of people, it makes it harder for them to vote. And because voting is something that is difficult for a lot of people, depending on where you live or what your job is or how much money you have available to you, just getting certain groups of people to vote less is a political win for the Republican Party. Diet Coke, how hard is it to get an ID? It's really hard. It's really hard. Not a lot of people have access to the kind of income for getting an ID. You know, it costs like $80 depending on what state you're in. That's number one. Number two is that Republican-controlled states have a habit of shutting down DMVs in Democratic-leaning areas to make it really hard for other Democratic voters to be able to get an ID. You know, if you got to drive 5 hours out of your hometown, you know, like you got to take the whole fucking day off work to get an ID. In addition to maybe not having, let's see here, if you work, you have a driver's license. Yeah, Diet Coke, you're not really here to learn things. You're just trying to prove me wrong, and you're not right, so you're blocked. Shellen says, also a cost to get a copy of birth certificate. Accurate. Dory Trow says, where do I find your answers to my questions? You just put the questions here, and I tell you the answer. Jay says, what about the guy who was forced to El Salvador, though court order said to bring him back? Yeah, you know, that is a massive fucking problem. We've already talked about Mr. Garcia on this stream many times. It is unconscionable and illegal what the Trump administration did to him. And the fact that they are fighting to not bring him back should worry and concern every American. It should make us not ever vote for any Republican ever again. We should all be in the fucking streets protesting and boycotting and calling our elected representatives 24/7, just being like, yo, what the fuck? This is not cool at all. And we should be doing all the work that we can to make sure that everybody who allowed this to happen, every Republican in office who is currently allowing this to happen, gets fucking booted out of office the instant they possibly can be. Let's see here. ABHT says, do you think it would have been different if BLM did January 6th? Yeah, obviously, you know, like they would have had the National Guard there, you know, beforehand instead of being caught unawares. Let's see here. Uperlar says, has Trump, in your opinion, woken a sleeping giant in terms of the Democrats and independents? I mean, I don't think so. We thought this during his first administration when he let COVID run rampant. And he started a dumb trade war with China back then also. And he only lost that election by 40,000 votes. So it is clear that the information environment is pulling for the Republican Party so hard that Trump can do a lot of damage to people and still win elections. And Republicans can do a lot of damage to people and still win elections. So we have to do the work of waking people up. Sir Edits, I don't think you're a real person. Let's see here. JY Jelly says, how did Jared Kushner and Steve Mnuchin get away with getting paid $3 billion from the Saudis? Because the people in power allowed it to happen, and we need to get rid of those people. The Republican Party is allowing massive amounts of corruption to happen so long as the person who's doing that corruption is another Republican or named Trump. Robin Lynn says, do you think there might be a war? You know, it's a difficult question to answer because, like, what counts as a war? You know, like, there were plenty of global conflicts that were happening during the first Trump administration, but for some reason we didn't call those wars. You know, so yeah, you know, I think there will continue to be global instability and conflict during the Trump administration because he is not doing anything to stop that stuff from happening. Dennis Griffin says most media is controlled by Democrats. That is inaccurate, Dennis Griffin. Additionally, social media is controlled by the billionaire class who are in league with the Republican Party. Let's see here. Nigel says, name one nice thing about Trump, and I'll listen and be open-minded for you. No, I don't want to say anything nice about him, and I don't need to prove that I am bipartisan. I am spitting facts. You can double check everything that I'm saying. Yeah, if I'm saying something that's my opinion, I'll tell you it's my opinion, but, you know, I don't need to prove the validity of what I'm saying by, you know, giving Trump some credit that he did not deserve. Myself says, let's talk about Musk running a muck and AK visas to his people when he allowed to ruin people here. Yeah, I can't say enough negative things about Elon Musk, so fucking go for it. Sir Edit says, Trump is awful. He is causing market manipulation, slowing growth, higher chances of global recession. Completely accurate. Beck, right, and when Biden was in office, instead of helping to fight against bullies, we helped the bullies. That is inaccurate, Beck. You know, I know you're probably talking about Israel, but we also helped Ukraine fight against Russia. Carmine says they want to give Trump credit, but you never hear them back. Project Warp Speed. Yeah, that's a really good question. Nigel says, how is it my wife makes double what Nancy Pelosi makes, yet we're only worth 0.5% of her net because Nancy Pelosi's husband is rich. So yeah, if you have a problem with insider trading, I would point you to the entire Republican Party who is doing it. Yes, Nancy Pelosi went out and said she didn't think it was a problem that people in Congress trade stocks, but if you want that policy gone, it's the Democratic Party that's going to get rid of it. They are the only ones that have a serious bill for getting rid of insider trading in Congress. Miss me with that Nancy Pelosi shit. Miss me with it. I don't give a shit. I am supporting her primary challenger in, the fucking midterms that are coming up. Fucking call your representative and tell them to vote for the Democrats' bill to get rid of insider trading. Do it. Do that work. Unless all you really give a shit about is casting aspersions on the Democratic Party. That seems like all you're really doing, Call your reps. Call your reps and do the fucking work. Give credit where credit is due. Representative Jayapal has a constitutional amendment that she's proposing to overturn Citizens United. That will get money out of politics. If you fucking care about that shit, then, fucking give that a Google, my man. Alrighty, let's see here. Is Trump deflating on other issues when he talks about a third term? No, I think he's probably just doing that thing that he always does, where he kind of like soft pedals the illegal thing he is about to do. Robin Lynn says, do you think Trump won this election honestly? I don't, but that doesn't mean that Elon Musk hacked the machines. It means that they did other illegal things, like Elon Musk was illegally sending mailers that said that they were Kamala Harris mailers to dissuade people from voting for Democrats, illegal campaign contributions, voter suppression, voter ID bills, voter purges, curing ballots, things like that. I think the Republican Party has been skewing election results for a long time, and we do not get mad at them enough for that. Ciara says the fact that so many are unaware that we are on the global human rights watch list is insane. Completely agree with that. J.Y. Jelly says, who do you see as the next dangerous Republican leader of the party after Trump keels over from KFC? I'm honestly not that worried about pretty much anybody in the Republican Party. Like, nobody has what Donald Trump has. But there's one person who I think is doing the work to make it seem like they are a populist hero, and that's Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley is completely full of shit, and yet he goes on there all the fucking time and, during his fucking, Senate hearings, and he seems like he's doing the good work, but he is not. He's a fucking phony, and he's a fake. He is a liar and a shill. So yeah, that is somebody who I worry about, because he's an extremely effective liar, where a lot of the Republican Party is not. Youper, I like you. Thank you for being here. Alex Clark says, why doesn't Israel accept more asylum seekers? Well, Israel is currently being run by an extremely far-right government, led by an extremely far-right fella named Benjamin Netanyahu. And so they are doing the soft apartheid, ethnic cleansing, war crimes things because they want to completely take over that region. And they want the West Bank and Gaza to be Israel, and they do not give a shit who they hurt in the process. So that is why they are doing that. They are bad people doing bad things. Beck, why is it a problem that Trump got elected, yet ballots were thrown out when Biden ran? Beck, that is inaccurate. There is no substantive data that there was any malfeasance during the 2020 election. The only electioneering that was going on, for the past 30 years has been Republican-led. Ballot purges, ballot curing, shutting down DMVs and polling locations, voter suppression, voter ID bills, and things like that. But yeah, there was nothing that was found during the 2020 election. Beck says, yes, there is. No, there wasn't, Beck. So you're out of here, buddy, because I don't like liars on my stream. Buckaroo says, what do you think about Vance? He's a piece of shit. He's a liar. He's an opportunist. He's full of it. Shelley says, gerrymandering, redistricting, completely agree. Yes, all of that. Senior Edit says, what do you think are the chances of a global recession? Well, who was it? Was it Charles Schwab or fucking Goldman Sachs or, fucking whoever said that it's 60%? It's probably higher because they tend to downplay those things. Alrighty. Mike Damone says, this guy is clueless. Well, Mike, you're not even here anymore. All right, let's see here. Okay, Off-Grid Minimalist says, have you seen the documentary Vigilantes Incorporated, a documentary about voter suppression in 2024? I have not, but I am interested in it now. Let's see here. Alrighty, Inverted Mystic, good to see you again. Inverted Mystic, how does it feel to be a Democratic Party talking head? How much has the DNC paid you? Inverted Mystic, what the hell's going on? JK, who do we look for 2026? Don't do that to me, Inverted Mystic. You're gonna give me a fucking heart attack. You're one of my ride or dies, man. Inverted Mystic, why would you make me feel this way, my man? Who do we look for in 2026 to vote for? Short answer is Democrats up and down the ballot. If there's somebody that you like better than who is running, then primary them. You know, like do the primary, my man. But yeah, I don't have like a lock on, who's running in every single district. I only know that I am going to be working to elect the dude who is primarying Nancy Pelosi. I think his first name is Sakat. I can't remember what his last name is. Miles says, will Kamala Harris a genuine good presidential candidate, not compared to Trump, just in general? I think so. Kay Cooper says, haha, another comedian in the house. Mystic, LOL, yes. The Angry Progressive says, how do the Democrats rebrand themselves in 18 months? It would almost be easier to start a new party. Completely disagree with that, the Angry Progressive. There are the infrastructure and name ID alone would take decades to recreate what the Democratic Party has. And so I don't think that it is incumbent on the Democratic Party to rebrand. Based on the data that I have seen, it seems as though no matter what the Democratic Party does, they're going to be suffering at the short end of a media environment that is weaponized against them. So I don't think that we should be looking at this as, can the Democrats pull themselves out of this? It should be, can we pull us out of this by voting for better politicians? Can we get enough people to vote for Democrats that we can exit this fucking spiral into authoritarianism? The Democrats have been playing a game that has been rigged against them for a really long time. And so I give them a lot of leeway for mistakes that they have made, both in messaging and governing and shit like that, because on the whole, they are doing the work. They are doing the good work on the whole. I am going to always vote for the party that has been saying that climate change is real for the last 40 years. I'm always going to vote for the party that strengthens unions as opposed to weakens unions. I'm always going to vote for the party that is closer to doing universal health care. I'm always going to vote for the party that wants to do something about gun violence. I'm always going to vote for the party that isn't cutting taxes and regulations so that billionaires can become even more wealthy and powerful. So yeah, I don't give a shit. I'm not waiting around for the Democratic Party to have perfect messaging. Even if they did, the social media environment would explode and say that it wasn't good enough. Name a single thing that the Democrats have done in the past 20 years that was not maligned by some corner of the internet. The Affordable Care Act made it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. But what was the narrative around the Affordable Care Act? The website didn't work. There's death panels in it. That was a lie. They said you can keep your plan, but you can't keep their plan. It's like, yeah, well, if you have a predatory plan that doesn't give you any coverage, yeah, we're going to get rid of that fucking thing. The Democratic Party gave us an NLRB that was fighting for unions for the first time in history. And what was the narrative? The Democrats have completely abandoned the working class. Okay, sure. Lena Khan, Joe Biden's head of the Federal Trade Commission, was going after monopolies for the first fucking time in decades. There you go, guys. They were fucking doing the work. Nobody gave a shit. The Biden administration lowered healthcare costs. The Trump administration is fucking skyrocketing them back up. The Biden administration got inflation from 9% back down to 2.4%. The Trump administration picking it fucking back up. And what are we all talking about on here? What's wrong with the Democrats? They're not doing enough. The Democratic Party is over. They need to rebrand. We need a new party. It's like, what the fuck, guys? They were doing all the things. Maybe not fast enough, maybe not aggressive enough as for you, but they were doing the work. And how did America respond? How did America thank the Democratic Party for the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history? How did the people thank the Democratic Party for having a president walk the picket line for the first fucking time in American history? How did America thank the Democrats for lowering prescription health care costs? How did the people thank the Democratic Party for lowering the rate of inflation and for delivering an infrastructure bill for the first time in almost 2 decades? for delivering gun control legislation for the first time in 2 decades. They voted Democrats completely out of government, basically, to where they're the minority in Congress, both houses, and they don't have the White House. So where's the disconnect here, guys? Is it that Democrats aren't doing a good enough job of messaging, or is that the billionaire class has made it so that no matter what Democrats do, they will find a reason to tell you that it is the wrong thing to do? And because people are all plugged into these fucking propaganda machines 24/7, we believe it. And and if you're one of those people that thinks propaganda doesn't work on you, I'm sorry to say that it does. It works on everybody. And you just got to recognize what are the narratives that are helping the billionaire class, what are the narratives that are helping the Republican Party, and recognize that shit is being paid to be put in front of you 24/7. And if propaganda version A doesn't work, they will send you propaganda versions B through Z, and hopefully one of those will work on you as well. Let's see here. JY Jelly says Dems need messengers to talk in simplistic terms. You do it, JY Jelly. I'm doing it. You do it too. Tweety Bird says, what do you think about Jasmine Crockett? I think she's great. Let's see here. Inverted Mystic says, is it ever locally acceptable to vote third party? Like one of my Republican friends was like, I can't vote for this person. They are insane. They think the Democrats with Trump, it is messaging. Yeah, I think if you have a third party candidate who is running in a local election and actually has a good chance of winning, I say vote for that person. Go crazy. I just think that the stakes are too high to risk a Republican winning any more seats of power than they already have. And so I do not advocate for hyping up third parties. What I advocate for is always voting for better over worse. If you don't like the Democrat that's currently in office, primary them and vote for the better candidate. If that candidate doesn't win and we got a general election between a Republican and a Democrat, vote for the better candidate, who 9 times out of 10 is going to be that Democrat. Let's see here. JY Jelly says, if betting your life, who do you predict is the front runner in 2028? Again, I'm not talking about 2028. I'm talking about 2026. I'm always going to punt on that question, JY Jelly. Thank you for being here, but I'm always going to redirect to 2026. Angelique says, hey, Jarrett, what are your thoughts on what the El Salvador president said? I didn't see that press conference. I did see on other comments here on TikTok that people were saying that he said that he can't bring that guy back from the concentration camp, which is a lie. He is the dictator of that country. So my guess is that they just don't want to bring him back, or that he's already dead. And in which case I would hope that people will fucking protest the shit out of that, because that is fucking, it's just, I have run out of words for how terrible what they did to that guy is, and I can't channel enough rage. I need y'all to do some raging for me, Oy, East Coast says, thank God real men with a pair always vote red. The rest are single, lonely, blue sissies. Well, that's not a question, East Coast, so you are out of here. Also, tell your mom to stop calling me. Let's see here. Inverted Mystic says they didn't give us a primary in 2024, though, unfortunately. So Inverted Mystic, that is actually not true. There was a primary. It was between Biden and I think there was like 1 or 2 other candidates, and Biden swept. People voted for Biden in the primary in 2024. Now, when Biden decided to dip out, the Democratic Party was in a bind because they had like 107 days until the general election, and they didn't really have time to do a full-on primary at that point. Additionally, Biden had kind of blessed Kamala for that position, and nobody was running against her. So why have a primary if nobody's running against her? Additionally, there were 2 states, one was Ohio, and I forget what the other one was, that was saying to the Democratic Party, if you do not tell us who your candidate is, we are going to print ballots without their name on it, which would have been a disadvantage to the Democratic nominee. So the DNC had to come up with a decision. Who is our nominee going to be? So I do not believe that not having a primary is the reason why Harris lost that election. I think she lost because she had less than 100 days to mount a presidential campaign. Los Charges says DNC rigged Harris to run just like they pushed Clinton over Bernie. That is not true, Los Chargers. The DNC did not rig Harris. She was the vice president. She was a natural person to step in. But I am also not here to relitigate the 2024 election for people who are potentially here in bad faith. Not you, Inverted Mystic. You're great. I love you. Let's see here. Miles says, have Democrats ever tried for free education? Yeah, that is part of the Democratic platform. The more progressive candidates like Bernie Sanders and AOC have been championing that for a really long time. Now, has the party ever attempted it? They have not had any sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Unified government attempt. Because Biden only had a unified government for 2 years during his administration, and during that time, they passed a whole bunch of other things instead. I do not believe, because everything that we needed to pass had to be based in finance, because we only had 50 votes. And everything that was going to get passed then needed every single Democratic senator to vote for it, which meant Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. And, as much as they fucking sucked, they were 2 Senate votes for Democrats that we now no longer have. So yeah, in order to pass some sort of legislation to get free public college, you would need at least 60 votes because Republicans could just filibuster that. Kate says, do you have any libertarian stance on any political topics? Not really, I don't think. W. Page, good to see you again. Harris had free college as part of what she campaigned on. Oh, well, there you go, everybody. Let's see here. Inverted Mystic says, well, I don't distinctly remember being able to vote for Democratic candidates, but I trust you, dude. Yeah, Inverted Mystic, you can give this a Google, there was a whole thing. Biden did really well in New Hampshire in the primary in 2024. I forget exactly the name of the other candidate. He was basically just running as I'm younger. And people did not buy what he was selling, let's see here. Senior Edit says, thoughts on Kari Lake? I know that name. Kari Lake. Why the fuck do I know that name? I know she's a Republican. I know she's a piece of shit. I can't remember exactly who she is, though. Matt Moody says, you guys have to find a better candidate. There's got to be one out there. There are 1,000, a million candidates who are better than every Republican candidate. Matt Moody, so I do not buy that argument one tick. Arizona, Kari Lake. Yes, thank you. Yes, I know Kari Lake. She sucks. She's a crazy person. She's a conspiracy theorist. She's an election denier. She's terrible. She is running for governor of Arizona. Well, I certainly hope that the people of Arizona are smarter than, what do you call it? Are smarter than electing her. Dean Phillips. Thank you. Dean Phillips was the primary in 2024. Let's see here. Frog says, free education takes a lot of taxes. Don't know if I can get behind that. It wouldn't be your taxes, Frog, unless you're a billionaire. Let's see here. Matt Moody says, why didn't Can always run again? How about that? You're going to have to clean up that question, Matt Moody. Let's see here. Do you know about the Ruth Collective? I do not know about the Ruth Collective. Uperlar says, if Trump drops unalived, does JD follow his agenda? I think he probably tries to, but he does not have the riz that Trump has. As loath as I am to give Trump any credit whatsoever, he has at least enough charm to convince the Republican base to vote for him. And part of that is not, him being charming. Part of that is just the fact that they edited the Apprentice to make him look like a genius, and the fact that there's this image of him being a successful businessman that he cultivated for like 40 years, even though it's all bullshit. Vegan Bitches says, have you heard of the Working Families Party? I have, and I regularly champion them. They're the only independent party that I think is doing it the right way. Slowly building up support and infrastructure to win on the federal level. Sorry. Matt Moody, Biden can run again. What do you think? I do not think that he should. He was too old in 2020. He was too old in 2024. He's not getting any younger. Kelsey says, what will happen if he doesn't bring that man falsely deported back? So here's the big umbrella. This is the biggest message of my entire live stream, Kelsey. There will be 0 negative consequences for anybody who is currently in power for Garcia being murdered while he was at that El Salvadorian prison camp. unless people like you and me do the fucking work. And what's the fucking work? The work is calling your representatives and putting pressure on them, especially if they're Republicans. Talking to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your loved ones, and making sure that they are not ingesting propaganda and misinformation. We gotta vote in better politicians in 2026. We gotta organize, we gotta convince, we gotta recruit, we gotta protest, we gotta boycott, we gotta strike. We are the only ones who are going to get accountability for what happened to Mr. Garcia. We are the only ones who can do that. Democrats don't have the power to do that, and they don't have the money to do that. The Republican Party is working with the billionaire class. They are the most powerful organization on the planet right now. They're even working with adversarial nations and violent dictators like Bukele and Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, who is also a 100 billionaire, so yeah, even if we all gave our money to the Democratic Party, they would still not have the resources they could to fight the behemoth of Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin and Peter Thiel and Donald Trump and 900 other billionaires whose names are not front of mind because they do a very good job of hiding from the public eye. So yeah, we have to do the work. It has to be us, guys. We are the only ones who can get us out of this. So do the work. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There are already great organizations that are doing this work. You guys just have to join them. Indivisible, run for something, vote Save America. And if you're ever wondering, like, I live in this place, I don't know how to help, what can I do? My DMs are open, guys. If there was any questions that I was not able to answer on this live stream that you still have, my DMs are open. You can email me through my website, jarrettberenstein.com. I love all the support that you guys give me. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the comments, all the likes, all the shares, all the gifts. If you want to support me financially, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can. I've got a Patreon you can find on my website, jarrettberenstein.com. I've got a store you can buy things from on jarrettberenstein.com/store. Ooh, I got like a little blowing bubbles over here. That's cute. And you can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and shit like that. So yeah, my normal streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. That is going to change starting tomorrow because I will be on the road for about a month going forward. So for the next month, y'all are just going to have to catch me when you catch me because I will be driving from city to city, doing stand-up shows. And so I will try to do live streams whenever I can. I always manage to eke out a little bit of time to do these live streams when I'm touring, but it is sporadic, erratic. It is all the words, meaning you don't know when it's going to happen, what time or for how long or what day or whatever. But I hope that you guys will find me when I am streaming on the road. I hope that you guys will hear me when I say, please do the work. It is only people like you and me doing the work that is going to get us out of this. And if we all do the work, then nobody has to do a lot of work. Don't make me knock on every door in America. I don't have the physical stamina for that. And also, there are a lot of people who are not going to open the door to a Jewish person, even one as good looking as I am. So please, guys, do the work and recruit other people to do the work. We need to sweep the midterms. That is the best way that we get out of this. We do our boycotting now. We do our striking and our protesting now. We put pressure on elected representatives now. But at the same time, we got to make sure that we are fucking owning the midterms. Let's fucking run the table, man. There are just enough Republican seats up in the Senate for us to vote them all out and have 67 seats in the Senate and be able to remove Trump from office if we also get back to the House, which we probably will. Now, will it be easy to get 67 Democratic seats in the Senate? Absolutely not. It is extremely unlikely that we will all do the amount of work necessary to do that. It's possible. It would just be very, 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 very hard. But maybe if we all work, if we all do the work, we could make it happen. I'm not trying to give anybody false hope here. What I'm saying is that we can do it if we put our minds to it. If we fucking start now, we can do it. It would just take a lot of work. And when pollsters tell you that it's unlikely that's going to happen or it's impossible to happen, what they're telling you is, we don't think you guys are going to do all that work. We don't think. We're basing this based on how much work people usually put in for elections, and we don't think people are going to do it. So, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you that it's possible or even likely. Sorry, that's not what I meant to say. Plausible. I'm not going to say that it's plausible or even likely, but I am saying it is possible. And possible is enough, you know? Even if we don't get 67, if we get a filibuster proof majority, or even if we just take the Senate and we suddenly have control over subpoenas and investigations and shit like that and committee meetings, that's harm reduction. That's better. But I say if you're going to punch somebody in the face, aim for the back of the head. Let's aim for 67 seats, however unlikely that is. Let's do that amount of work. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Catch me on the road. Send me a DM. Send me an email. Good luck out there, everybody. Again, I'm not really sure when I'm going to have time to pop on here again, but I will. I will see y'all. I just don't know when. So, yeah, take care, everybody. Do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. First day on the road, I'm going to get a massage. That's my gift to myself. And so, yeah, thank you for being here, everybody. Don't wave the white flag or do a victory lap. That's what Democrats lost in 2016 and 2024. They did a victory lap too quickly. Completely agree with that, inverted mystic. The tea drinker, Trobos. I keep reading about how tariffs are changing the prices, but I don't know how true it is since I'm not in America. Well, let me be the one to tell you, the tea drinker, Trobos. It 100% is true. So, there you go. All right, Robin Lynn, where do you do stand-up? If you go to my website, you will see all of my dates and a way to see me. I am opening for a headliner named Steve Hostetter, so you can check me out there. Yeah, my website is where you can go for all the relevant info, everybody. I will see y'all when I see you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye. Goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.